which I also want to get to. But there's one more element of the atmosphere that I feel like I have to talk about because it's such a huge component of the game, and that's the audio tapes. Everyone in Rapture is like an amazing podcaster. They record their voices and they just leave audio tapes laying around. This is really like
Yeah,
the world of podcasts.
the world of podcasts. That's the future, man.
But
No,
no, the audio tapes are quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean most of the story is kind of like the information that you receive about this world is told to you through the audio tapes. And I think in general it works like pretty well. I mean, I do feel like at times like kind of the audio tapes feel a little bit forced, like, oh wow, I found like this audio tape right here that it completely explains like this exact situation and like what everything is. Like that seems a little bit forced. And a lot of games push this kind of like I would say archaeologist meme where like you don't really know what's going on, but then you have to like discover it through like bits and pieces that are in the world. I mean, it works. I feel like it for the most part like is fine. I would say I would give it like maybe like an 8 out of 10, but I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, and I enjoyed certain characters more than others. Like I think the scientists, like Dr. Suchong and Tenenbaum, like theirs made more sense to me. Like they were talking about their experiments, and it was like almost like they were just adding extra documentation. And it seemed even like, especially with Tenenbaum, like the stuff she couldn't write in her science reports, she was giving her more of her like subjective opinion in the audio tapes, and it showed more of her like human side. But I know what you mean. There were definitely some audio tapes that seemed like they were just put there for convenience, or like, oh, you didn't know this part of this game? You probably should. Let's put an audio tape there. I think the biggest part of the audio tape part that frustrated me though was just the fact that like it's cool because you can just listen to them and keep moving around and explore, but sometimes you get into combat with splicers and you have the audio tape playing. And so I definitely lost bits and pieces of the story just because the audio tapes don't pause or anything. You can't pause the audio tapes. So like when you're in combat, it's kind of hard to pay attention to them over gunfire and trying to survive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like it. I mean, there's so many really strong suits of this game that this might be one of the few kind of criticisms of it. I mean, in general, I think like they add a lot to it. Like the actual stories and like information you learn through the audio tapes is like really, really good. It's just like, yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe they could have found another way to convey some of it, maybe.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of intentional because I get the impression with Bioshock that they just didn't want to slow down the game and like segment the story from the gameplay. They wanted the player to have more of a seamless experience, like they were exploring Rapture organically, and there wasn't going to be all these cutscenes and things that sort of detracted from the actual gameplay experience. They wanted it to be as organic as possible, and I think audio tapes were just the easiest way they could do that.
Yeah. I think you're right. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't make video games. It's something that I think it's a difficult. It would be difficult to imagine a better system. But yeah. I mean, to me, like what you got from the audio tapes was enough to make it like for me not to care so much about the fact that it was a little bit forced. But whatever.
I totally agree with you, but you know, like we both love stories. But our friend Jonathan, who makes the music for this podcast, by the way, Jonathan, this is his favorite game of all time. Bioshock's his absolute favorite game, and part of the reason is because the story is actually so meshed into the gameplay. He doesn't like RPGs and games with stories very much, so Bioshock really worked for him in a way that just kind of let him keep playing without having the story bog him down. So I think for some people, this audio tape idea of not pausing the gameplay at all for the story really works well.